They spread rumors that I was sending harassing messages to people, even as the messages streamed one way toward me. They said I controlled a misogynistic mob and was using it to attack people. I'd never been more alone. I was called a pedophile, a rapist, an abuser, the typical dog whistle used in feminist spaces to evoke the dangerous tranny stereotype, invading your bathrooms. Even when the rumors were debunked, even with a history of cohabiting respectfully with partners, a history of being a respectful tenant, the damage was never repaired. The purpose was to keep firing until I was gone, until every possible bad thing had been said about me. Previously, their ostracism had been silent, made simple by the fact that no one cared about what happens to trans femmes who made games. The fact that my games had inadvertently made me visible meant that attack had to be devastatingly public. My fake crimes commensurate to the amount of disgust required to repel me. This is the danger of the token system. It elevated me to a level of violent politics I was unprepared for. Very few people want to defend a target of disposability. I was told by one person that she couldn't risk losing her job, another that she didn't want to become a target too. I was threatened into not defending myself, gaslit into silence, told that people knew things about me that were never explained. When I asked how I could do accountability, when I said I would do whatever they wanted, they said I was incapable of accountability, that my crime was unknown and my sentence was permanent. That is the point where my body starts to die. My attackers were expert pathological liars who had been getting away with it for years. Punishment is not something that happens to bad people. It happens to those who cannot stop it from happening. It is laundered pain, not a balancing of scales. For their ego, they trade the career, health, community, and sometimes life of the victim. When the people who are scapegoated happen to be from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, the culture calls it coincidence, clutching our respectable counterparts to their chests like pearls, a talisman of tokens to ward away reality. Accusations of sexual madness are a key weapon used against marginalized people in feminist spaces because it arouses people's disgust like no other act. Mobbing uses these rumors to trade a vague suspicion for the actual reality of violence. It's like turning around the corner and watching someone on the street having their teeth kicked in by a mob who assures you that just before you appeared, this person had committed some mysterious act which justifies limitless brutality. I was, in effect, beaten until I had brain damage over a long period of time. Unlike some other survivors of trauma, I was unable to heal because I was never separated from the source of the danger. I was never given the chance to vent, to express myself, to tell my side of the story, but I had to keep working harder than ever while being constantly exposed to violence. The pressure on me was not merely to survive, but to display no signs of the incredible amount of damage pouring into me daily, to never display the slightest hint of anger, to never cry, to not argue with people telling me horrible things in my face. Every hint of damage was an excuse to further isolate and demonize me. The cost of resisting disposability was PTSD. The allostatic load is the wear and tear on the body, which grows over time when the individual is exposed to repeated or chronic stress. Stress hormones such as epinephrine and cortisol, in combination with other stress-mediating psychological agents, such as increased myocardial workload, decreased smooth muscle tone in the gastrointestinal tract, and increased coagulation effects, have protective and adaptive benefits in the short term, yet can accelerate pathopsychological when they are overproduced or mismanaged. This kind of stress can cause hypertension and lead to heart disease. Constant or even irregular exposure to these hormones can eventually induce illness and weaken the body's immune system. To cover up the abuse and protect the reputation of the games industry, it was deemed worthwhile to lower my lifespan, weaken my immune system, and permanently damage my body. I wake up feeling burnt, damaged, corroded, I crawl up from an insane, nauseating, unreal pit and slowly come back to the world. I have constant headaches. Having PTSD is like breaking a limb and never being able to rely on it strongly. The sudden weakness of standing on it wrong, suddenly being unable to hold something, a fatigue and a spasm of nerves. Attacks on marginalized artists go beyond merely denying them access to networks. They also damage a person's faculties of expression. For a long time, PTSD deprived me of the privilege of being a multi-temporal being. The space of time I was able to safely think about shrunk to about a minute. Larger projects, the kind most tied to commercial value, and to the media coverage apparatus, were difficult for me due to the traumatic potential of expanding my aperture of time. The worst thing is not having other survivors to commensurate with. I can think of people who went through similar situations and were defended, reintegrated. Their stories are paraded through feminist spaces, saturated through social media, and every time I'm exposed to them, I feel less safe, not more. This enhances my feeling of dehumanization. Why was I not worth protecting in the exact same situation? I must not be human like them. The inability to share stigma is even worse than the original act of violation. The greater part of a wound is in its ability to heal. The typical narrative on abuse on social media does include the problems of the most vulnerable, like how public verbal harassment may only be an ultimately minor part of a trans person's exile. The most skilled abusers know that a good exile is done with pure silence, through the whisper network, by having the person wake up one day and have every second or third person she knows or practices her profession block her and or stop talking to her. No one tells her why. She has to painstakingly talk to every friend, every contact, every person she would normally have a cheerful conversation with. The electric shocks of knowing that every simple human interaction you have with a friend or stranger could turn into a nightmare of victim blaming. Or worse, a cold iciness where they pretend nothing is wrong. Imagine repeating that experience hundreds and hundreds of times with no way to end it. After the noise, the long years of silence are what kills us. A trans person can try to talk about her experience of abuse for years and have no one listen. But the instant one of her abusers smeared her, everyone is alert and awake. Feminism, or queerness, takes a vague disposability and makes it a specific one. The vague ambient hate that I have felt my whole life became intensely focused. The difference between being soaked in nauseous, irritating gasoline and having someone throw a match at you. Normal hate means someone and their friends being shitty towards you. Radical hate places a moral dimension onto hate, requiring exclusion from every possible space. A true social death. To find the things I wanted in queerness, I had to find those who had been exiled from it, those whose names had been torn from. This was an excerpt from Hot Allostatic Load, an essay by Porpentine.
I remember, before I was blind, I went to Omnia once. This was before the borders were closed, when you still let people travel. And in your citadel, I saw a crowd stoning a man to death in a pit. Ever seen that? It has to be done, Brother mumbled, so the soul can be shriven, and... I don't know about the soul. Never been that kind of a philosopher, said Didactylos. All I know is it was a horrible sight. The state of the body is not... Oh, I'm not talking about the poor bugger in the pit, said the philosopher. I'm talking about the people throwing the stones. They were sure, all right. They were sure it wasn't them in the pit. You could see it in their faces. So glad it wasn't them that they were throwing just as hard as they could.